I'm joined today by two-time major champion Dan Dawson. Dan, how are you?
I remain a two-time major champion. Thank you very much for giving my full title, Burton. I'm not bad. I hope you're doing well yourself.
Yes, and thank you for joining us. It's been a busy 4 to 5 weeks for you. 32 days, 32 groups, 32 nights commentating on the PDC Home Tour. Before that, the PDC, though, experimented with a few of the darts at home events. How did you find the workings out of those test events?
They were good fun, really. I mean, before the home tour was created into a more formal event, which was always going to be geared towards somebody winning the group and progressing to something, and the players are getting money for taking part. It was just something to do, really. It was just something for the PDC to remind people that darts still existed and give some of their players just something constructive to do of an evening. So it was just a bit of fun. And I think if you go back and watch those darts at home events, I know the home tour is a pretty laid back kind of evening. But those ones, people were just sort of mucking about and just having a laugh, really. And there was quite a bit of banter. Obviously, when you get Matt Edgar involved in anything, there's going to be a lot of chat. But yeah, it was fun and it was different. And it was just a way of, in the early days of the lockdown, of just trying to get some darts on the go, because there was nothing else to watch in terms of live sport.
So when the PDC came to you and said, we're going to do a home tour for 32 consecutive nights and we want you to present it, what was your initial reaction?
Great, to be honest. I mean, it sounds kind of daunting with 32 consecutive nights, but having done the first two home tour events, they were just good fun to be involved in. I didn't at that point know exactly what it was going to look like. We had X number of tour card holders. I can't remember. It's probably about just over half who immediately said, yeah, I'll play, definitely. But then when others saw what it was like, they kind of got more interested. So, I mean, I don't know how many we got in the end. It was more than 90. It might have been 100. There's probably 20 or 30 players who either didn't want to or couldn't play for various reasons. So the fact that we've got everybody involved, I think it was really good. I mean, it was nice to, I go around with the tour and I obviously do the Pro Tour events and the Euro Tour stuff, but there's still players on the tour that I've not really had a great deal of interaction with. So, having a chat with the likes of Gert Nenches and talking to him about, his setup at home, what got him into darts, or Mike Kuyvenhoven or Mike van Dijvenbode, some of the foreign lads who haven't made it to big TV events. It's good to be able to talk to them about that and just hear their passion for the game coming through. I mean, some guys had really good nights, some guys had absolute stinkers of nights, but at least they all got an opportunity to be involved. So yeah, I liked the idea from the off. I didn't realise I was going to be doing all 32 in a row, but I'm certainly glad that I did.
Well, it was a very quick turnaround from when they announced it. Barry Hearn, of course, on our show previewed that it was going to be announced, and then few days after the interview, it got started on that Friday. Going into it, did you have any expectations for how it was going to go?
No, not really. I mean, I kind of went into it thinking, right, this will be where we'll see some mad stuff. We'll see people throwing 112 averages all night because they're on the practice boards at home and they will be, there's no excuse. There's no hiding place. Darts players have been telling me for a decade that on the practice board at home, I do magical, wondrous things. Didn't go like that. And a lot of them, particularly in the early couple of weeks when perhaps they hadn't watched any of the home tour stuff prior, they just thought, hey, I'll be fine. I'll play me practice board. It'll be just like practicing at home and I'll be brilliant. It didn't work like that. There was pressure. There was genuine pressure. And once you apply pressure, then people feel a little bit out of their comfort zones. And I think some people feeling pressure on a board where they never feel pressure any other time, it actually did really hit them hard. Peter Wright, the first night, he played dreadfully. And then he managed to, he pulled himself together by the final night and qualified for the next stage of the tournament. So I think, yeah, it's just a different form of the game. And it's something that I didn't really appreciate. I certainly think that Daniel Larson and players like that who've played quite a lot of online darts have benefited from that because they know what they were going into. They knew what the rhythms of the game and the feel of it would be like. And so those guys with a bit more experience just had a little bit of a head start on some of the other lads who'd never done it before.
A few teething problems early on, but the home tour seems to have got into a stride and providing nightly entertainment for darts fans and playing opportunities for the players. But looking back on the first phase now, that's finished. Who's caught your eye so far?
In terms of the standard, I mean, the three I'd be looking at would be Luke Woodhouse. I mean, obviously, he had the performance of the whole thing in smashing Gerwyn Price 5-0 with a 9-darter. You would look at Joe Cullen, who was incredible over the course of the night, 106 and a bit average. And José de Sousa only lost one leg over the course of his 3 games. But then there are other people that you would definitely want to give a mention, the likes of Gert Nenches, Carl Wilkinson. Carl Wilkinson won 2 games on the tour all year and then won all 3 on the night. So there are people who were performing above their normal level and played really well. And they should be recognised for that. But I mean, players like, look, you guys you're up to date with the tour. Players like Cullen, de Sousa, and indeed Luke Woodhouse, they've all played some magnificent darts. I think José de Sousa is going to be massive, and I don't know why Joe Cullen isn't more massive than he already is. I mean, I asked him on the home tour, why have you not won loads more than you have? You see it on the Euro Tour on a regular basis. You put Joe Cullen on a big stage and he can play absolutely incredibly. I think it's a tragedy that Joe Cullen has not achieved more in the years he's been playing darts. He's put it down to a mental thing and not enough application. And I hope that maybe that will change over the coming years, because he's certainly got the talent to be a top player.
On only the second night, we saw Luke Woodhouse throwing a 9-darter, which attracted a lot of headlines in the world of sports. What, though, would you say was your standout moment from the home tour's first stage?
I think if you're looking for an individual moment, then you would look at Luke Woodhouse and his 9-darter. I think the best checkout I have seen is from Mike DeDecker. He took 135 out against Steve Brown in a leg he needed to win. He needed to win by 5-2 to top the group, and that managed to get him the breaker throw. And he ended up, I think he held throw next leg to win 5-2 and just snuck ahead of Bomber to win the group. And then Steve quite rightly pointed out that it's quite difficult when you've got an idiot like me pointing out every single leg what the score is, and Mike DeDecker might just pull this off. But look, that again, it's one of the home tour things. That's the way it's set up. It's the same for everybody, and it's one of those things they've got to deal with. It could, the home tour could have looked very different. The home tour could have been 10 big name players. They've got great setups that are all sent to them by the PDC, fabulous internet connections, and they just play each other over and over and over again, night after night, and do that. But that's not what it was about. It was about getting as many different players involved, supporting them and giving them a chance to play in some meaningful tournaments. It's not just a cartel or a closed shop for the big names. So that's how we've had people like Luke Woodhouse and Gert Nenches come through, Ryan Murray, Mike DeDecker. I mean, nobody, I don't think, if you wanted a load of, just a bunch of big names playing, I'm not sure many people had put José de Sousa in there, and yet he's managed to go through and win all 3 of his games with the loss of only 1 leg. So I think the plurality of it has been one of its strengths, even if it has been a technical issue on some nights, because obviously different folks have different setups at home and some people can't work a phone.
One of the fun parts of the home tour has been the players having to call their own scores in the games, and we've seen some amusing impressions of referees' 180 calls, most notably Paul Hinks. But from what you've seen, which player has had the best 180 calls so far?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think. That's a very good question. And to be honest, off the top of my head, at the end of 32 nights of this, I can't quite remember. I'm mercifully thankful that the vast majority of players, even Jose, were getting their counting right. There was only one time, I think, in the whole tour, or the first 32 nights of it, where a player has gone for a checkout, gone, check, yeah, I've taken it, and then I've had to go, that's not right, pal. And it was Yoza who took out 92 when he wanted 94. So he came back and pinned the double one anyway. But look, I'm not Kurt Bevins or Russ Bray or George Noble. I'm all right with me counting and me maths, but I tell you what, it's difficult, particularly when you're not 100% sure where a dart is lying in the board sometimes if you've got a dodgy connection. But yeah, they've helped me out over the course of this first month of action, so I'm just glad of that. As for the best 180 call, somebody was doing a different impression every single time they hit one. I can't think who it was, but it was a decent array. It might have been Cullen because he hit plenty of them. But yeah, I can't answer that one, I'm afraid, Alex. Sorry, pal.
Well, I do a different 180 call every time I hit one. Luckily, that's not that often, so I never have to do a 180 call. Now, from your role as a presenter, it's been great to see the pre- and post-game chats you've had, as well as the in-game chats with the players on screen. You follow the tour a lot. Has that been one of the best parts, though, for you, helping bring out the players' personalities and backstories?
Yeah, and it's something that we need to do. And by we, I mean everybody involved in darts needs to do more. And to be honest, lads, I think you're very good at it, in that you go and get interviews with a lot of fringe players that you're not seeing interviewed on the telly regularly. Look, we know what Gary Anderson's like. We know what Michael van Gogh's like. They have a microphone put in front of their mouths every single time they're playing in the Premier League and major tournaments because they're the big stars, and that's how it works. People want to hear from them. But you won't learn the personalities. You won't get the stars of tomorrow, and you won't have fans invested in them and wanting them to do well until you hear from them, until they get an opportunity to speak. And some of these guys are interesting or have great backstories or are just funny. So I think the more we can do that as a sport, as an industry, as journalists, whatever, then I think that helps. I think there are a lot of really interesting stories to be told about the players in darts because they are normal people doing extraordinary things. And I think that's what makes them relatable. That's what's been the case for decades in this sport. People watch what looks like a normal person who's had a normal life up there like a superhero on stage and being watched by millions of people doing stuff that very few people can do. So I think the more we can do that, the more we can shine a light on these guys and give them an opportunity just to be who they are and tell their stories. I think that benefits everyone because I'm sure there'll be people who've dipped in and out of the home tour or maybe have watched it religiously. They might be, proper darts anoraks like myself, but they might have learned a bit about one of the players, something about them that they didn't know before. And it means next time they see them playing on telly in the Grand Slam or the UK Open or the World Championship, they go, oh, it's that guy. Oh, it's that guy who runs a load of supermarkets in Sweden or whatever. And it just gives them a bit more of an identity and it helps people relate to them. And I think that's a good thing. And we should be doing more of that. But as I say, I think you guys are very good at doing it because you get some interviews with players that, by and large, they're overlooked by a lot of the darts media.
Now, Darts at Home has grown massively in the last month or so. Obviously, your nights have been spent on the home tour, but have you had much of a chance to see what the competition are offering as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a bit of the Modus stuff. I've watched a bit of the remote darts league when I finished, or just watched it a bit on YouTube because I'm good mates with Little Richard, who's obviously presenting that. I think, like, technologically, they're excellent and they're really good, and it's darts. I mean, that's excellent. You've got some great names in the Modus ones. I think they've all done a really good job. They're obviously coming at it from different angles. It's a different technological challenge to be broadcasting from Hong Kong and Australia, Canada and Sweden, potentially all in the same night with the home tour. But it's there to support the players. I think there's been some very, very good stuff that's been taking place in all the various online dart leagues. And look, if people are interested in watching it, it gives the players something to focus on and keep them sharp for when the darts returns. I'm all for it. Just keep playing. I mean, I quite like keeping an eye on the sort of amateur ones or something, the little leagues that aren't even streamed, just to see how players are getting on. You lads know I play in a league with myself and Chris Murphy, just play each other over and over again. We've been doing that remotely. I've noticed that you've got the bang average darts league that's kicked off, which looks a great idea for people who've got very little talent at actually playing the game like myself. But it's one of the beauties of this sport, isn't it? You can play it remotely. It's not the same. It's not quite as good, but it's not a bad substitute.
Now, we're about to move into the second phase of the home tour next week with the playoffs. Are there any plans, though, to tinker with the broadcast or introduce new features? Or will it be similar to what we've seen so far for the first 32 nights?
I think it will be similar. I mean, they're changing the format slightly, so it's going to be best of 11 instead of best of 9. So it'll be slightly longer as we go into the second stage. In terms of the technical aspects, to be honest, lads, I don't know. All of the sort of decisions about what it looks and sounds and feels like, that's come from the PDC. I just basically do what they tell me to do. It will be essentially me in my basement chatting and introducing players. And look, if there are any improvements, we've tinkered with things. We use different software as it's got on to improve picture quality and stability of connections and things. I would hope that now that everybody has played once or twice on the tour, and we've nailed down any teething issues, that it should go without a hitch. Whether they're planning any more sexy developments in how it's going to look, I don't know. Watch this space. I suppose there's not a great deal of time to turn that around between now and the start of it. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, they're working all the time, these guys, to try and make it a better program. I mean, it's, you know, that's one of the things. It's being shown on TV in Australia and across Europe and stuff like that. So there's a lot of challenges that need to be overcome to make sure that you've got a product that can go on those platforms.
Sticking with your work for the PDC, last week you also held a debate with Wayne Mardle, Rod Studd and Stuart Pike discussing the top 5 best players ever, excluding Scott Rand, Mark Walsh and Co Stompy. Who makes your 5?
I mean, mine is similar to those. I think everybody in the world picks the same top 3. It's just what order you put them in. And then it's who do you give 4 and 5 to? I might be tempted to put John Lowe in there. One of the guys that, I mean, Bob Anderson's certainly one that didn't really get much of a mention. And I know it might be a case of recency bias, but I genuinely, in my time covering darts, Peter Wright is so good. And I really do think that, yes, obviously he got over whatever was holding him back in beating Van Gerwen at the World Championship, beating him in the final. But when you look at how many major finals he's been in and how many he could have won and some he definitely should have won. You know, if you'd given him the Premier League where he missed 6 match darts, if you'd given him the Grand Prix where he should have been 4-0 up on Van Gerwen, he should have won the Champions League of darts. There's 3 that definitely should be in the bag already. Then you start accruing those major titles, and he was very, very close in other ones as well. He starts getting right up there in terms of the most decorated major winners in PDC history. And when you start doing that, when you couple that with the averages he's thrown, the fact that he's been going for quite a long time now and forced his way to where he is. Phil Taylor himself said he should be world number 1. And if he doesn't get to world number 1, he needs to kick up the backside. I genuinely think the way he plays the game, the surgical way he manoeuvres his darts, he throws any set of darts, of course, and can hit 110 averages. I really do think that he's in the discussion for one of the greatest players I've ever seen. Whether he makes the top 5, I don't know. But certainly Bristow, Taylor and MVG. And I think I'd probably be putting Taylor top of that list. I think everybody picks those top 3.
Well, Peter Wright might make it to number 1 if events keep getting postponed. And that brings us to our next question. Just a couple more questions. Beyond the home tour now, a lot of eyes on where the PDC goes next, with a decision on the World Matchplay's current dates set to be made in the next couple of weeks. What's your feeling on what happens with the World Matchplay this year?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Burton. We're all guessing, aren't we? I know that I'm sure TV companies would want to have some darts to show. You know, the likes of Sky or ITV, they would want to see something on the telly. But then we all know that when we had that UK Open, which was hit by the weather, it's weird when you don't have any darts. The fans are such an integral part of the viewing experience. It's not like we did. One of the charity events, and we had Mark Selby, the snooker player, on, and there's talk about the World Championships going ahead at the Crucible in not very far away, a few weeks' time. And you know, he agrees himself. Yeah, it's weird playing with no fans, but when you're watching on the telly, it's not that much different. You know, a ripple of applause for a good shot, a bit of cheering at the end of a frame or the end of the match, but the vast majority of that broadcast, it is basically just quiet and 2 guys on the snooker table. You don't even get that many shots of the crowd. It's so different with darts, and I don't know whether it'll go ahead. I think there are perhaps more pressing concerns about whether you do it with fans or not, in that how do you do it fairly? We don't know how we compensate for all these tournaments going in terms of the rankings and who qualifies for things. What happens if certain players from certain countries, and potentially quite a few players from certain countries, can't get to the UK, aren't allowed, have to quarantine for a long while, or would have to quarantine a long while if they went back? Can you put a ranking tournament on if 10, 20, 30% of your players just aren't in a position to come and compete? Is that fair? I don't have the answers to these questions, and I'm kind of relieved that I'm not in a position to make these decisions, because I think they're very, very difficult ones to make. And I think whatever decision you come to, then people are going to be disappointed, whatever, depending on what side of the line they fall.
And finally, once we do return to normality one day, what are you most looking forward to in darts? Is it the Euro Tour being back, being able to play Chris Murphy in person in the Premier League, or maybe something else?
I mean, look, I will not deny that the feeling of crushing Chris Murphy, whether remotely or in person, is a majestic one, Alex. And it's one that I cannot get enough of. But it will be the Euro Tour. And I mean, look, this summer, we were supposed to go to Budapest for the first time. That was amazing. For the first time in my career, I was going on the World Series events, which would have been New York and Australia and New Zealand. I've always wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand. And of course, that's not going to happen this year. Fingers crossed I'll be able to be part of the team next year. We'll see. I realise that sitting here complaining about, we could have gone to all these lovely foreign cities when there are much greater concerns that affect the world, may sound a little bit petty, but I'm just going to indulge myself for a little while, because, to be honest, Euro tours all over Germany, in the Netherlands, in Budapest, I mean, it would have been brilliant. And it will be when it starts up again, but it's just a frustrating time, but one we all have to endure, because, as I say, there are greater worries at the moment.
Yes, there are, though. With football resuming in Germany and Estonia this week, darts can only be right around the corner. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure, gentlemen. And yes, darts has resumed in Germany, and it's actually created the greatest job in this industry. And I hope at some point you can get an interview with Deddy off the Euro Tour, who operates the social distancing lollipop just to tell players to stop and go, because that is a revelation I did not know darts needed, but it turns out it's hilarious and therefore good.